can hear me well?
Yes.
Ok, good, thank you. Grazie Davide perché sì, serve da verificare. Okay, we wait a couple of minutes before to start. People are still arriving in the class. Okay. Allora. That's what I used to write. Okay, guys, just to let you know, I'm waiting online my colleague, but I think he's having issue in connecting, so I will wait another couple of minutes, and if he's not able to connect, we start with another item, because now we are supposed to have a seminar, which is this one. So I'm just waiting another couple of minutes to see if he's able to connect, okay? This is why we didn't start yet. Okay, while we are waiting, I would like to let you know that the presentation of today is outlined on a paper that we have together, and you can find the full text just inserting the title online. So you can just insert the title and download the PDF if you want to have a look without going through the library, the University of Bologna library. This is free access. Okay, just a couple of minutes. Sorry, guys. He's having issues in connecting, but he said that he's sorting out everything. So hopefully it works soon. While he's connecting, I would like to tell you that I have indicated one more unit, one more class with you, extra time. So, well, anything is compulsory, but if you want to join me in this accounting game on integrated reporting, that will be held on Tuesday, the 22nd of March. The class will be a different one, Angera 3, because in this class there are chairs that are easy to move and you need to work together. Hopefully you will arrive soon. Okay, paper to download. Here.
I've arrived.
Oh, ciao Ben. One moment.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh, wow, now we can see you.
Well,
Welcome,
my apologies.
Pardon?
My apologies. Thank you very much for the welcome and the invitation. And I apologize. I had a few connectivity issues here.
No worries at all. Things can happen. Absolutely. So welcome, Ben. Professor Benedict Shi is a professor from Canberra University. He's a professor in law, and today he's going to present us the main, distinctions among these different concepts, which are based on a joint paper that you can freely download online. Allora, I don't remember how to do that. It's very easy if I find the right place.
It's very easy once you know.
Riunione, galleria. Allora, no, it was a little bottom just around here. Ah, forse devo andare su Benedict. Sorry, I have to look for you. Where are you? Ben, here. This. Imposta come relatore. Ok, cambia. Let's see if it works.
There we go.
Good. Now you can share the screen, do everything, I think.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you. And hello,
now,
everyone.
You cannot see much. Maybe if I do this, it's nicer, so you can have a look about my class.
There we are. Very good. I can see everybody.
Yeah.
Even the people in the back are waving. That's excellent. Means they're not yet asleep.
So many people are connected from home as well, as you can see from the screen.
Yeah, it's well attended. So, well, that's very good. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope to be able to keep you awake. Law lectures are quite difficult that way. That's the hardest part. We'll try not to do too much law and do something useful and interesting. Thank you, Fede, for the invitation, and we will get going. Apologize, everyone, for being a bit late, and I've had a few connectivity issues, as Fede has indicated. I'm dialing in from Australia, where it's just after 7 o'clock at night. I've got a Canadian accent, so you're not going to get a g'day, mate. That's because I'm originally from Canada. I just had a question. Is there anybody from Australia in class today? There we go. Where are you from, mate?
From Brisbane.
Brizzy. All right. I went to UQ, University of Queensland. It's probably my favorite city in Australia, next to Canberra, of course, where I live now. So Canberra is the capital of Australia, for those of you who don't know, and that's where I'm from. That's where I live, and so I'll be presenting from there. Over the course of the presentation, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them at any time. I'm happy with that, to pause the presentation and discuss. Let's see. Thank you. I'm going to see if I can turn off Fede's mic here. There we go. Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm glad you told me. I heard some echo and I didn't know if it was because the sound was going all the way to Australia and back, or there was another issue. So I think we're organized. There's one gentleman there. Okay, I can't hear you guys talking now because you're muted. So maybe you'll have to throw something at the projector. We'll try to figure it out.
Giusto. Ben, apologize. We cannot see the presentation. We can see just you. Is that fine? You don't have the presentation yet?
I've got my presentation, but I'm liking everybody looking at me. I'm having my Donald Trump moment. Okay. All right. Let's get on with it. Let's see. All right. So here we are. And as Fede has said, this is based on a paper that we've done jointly. So I should probably have her name on it as well. But I'm doing a presentation, so I have just my name on it at this point. And the issue is, what are the conceptual differences between these four topics? Pardon?
It came back to echo. Maybe we have to switch off again the sound of the cloud.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Fede, have you got this under control?
Now it's perfect.
What's that? Okay. All right. Looks like it's under control. Let me make sure that we're let's see here. Gonna try this again, make sure we're going. Sorry, everyone. There we go. So we're looking at these different concepts, and it's going to be very important that you understand these concepts that look quite related, but in fact are very different. You can think about this if you're dating somebody, you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or maybe you've got both a boyfriend and a girlfriend, I don't know, but somebody says, I love you or I like you. What is the difference? It's a very critical difference depending on who you are. But the words are similar, but they're critically different. They're conceptually different. And in this particular case, we're looking at 4 concepts that involve business and governments around the world, national governments and regional political powers, as well as international legal system, legal powers. And so what we're trying to do is, if you look at the last line here, is we're trying to distinguish between these concepts, the underlying concepts, so that we can invest our resources in the particular project we're interested in. So we can put our resources behind the policy we're trying to pursue. So when we're looking at sustainability, we're saying, well, what exactly is sustainability? And there's different definitions that people try to put into sustainability. And we think Marshall and Toffel have done a nice job at this. What they've done is they've sort of put a little pyramid in place, and they say that sustainability can refer to actions that, if continued at the current or forecasted rate, endanger the survival of humans. So that could be something like global warming if it goes unabated for whatever century or centuries. Or sustainability can address actions that significantly reduce life expectancy or other basic health indicators. So this is something's going to be not sustainable if it has a significant negative impact on human health. Alternatively, we can think of sustainability as dealing with actions that may cause species extinction or that violate human rights. So, for example, in Australia, there are policies that may cause koalas to become extinct in New South Wales by 2050. So some people say, well, that's not sustainable. That's a lack of sustainability. Other parties or other definitions can be something that actions that reduce the quality of life or are inconsistent with values, beliefs, or aesthetic preferences. So they say that's not sustainable if it's reducing the quality of someone else's quality of life or the quality of life of other species. So you can see, people say that's unsustainable. So you can see here a move in the definition of sustainability, or the concept of sustainability, from dealing exclusively with the human species, through other species, through general quality of life, through to something that is aesthetic. Somebody might say, well, I just think it's unethical to reduce the quality of life for goldfish. Don't know. But you can see that this is that there are questions about how we should define sustainability. And what Marshall and Toffel have argued is that the levels 1, 2, and 3 are fine, but that you can't get to the 4th level, the top level of ethical issues. And they say that they make the argument that the concept of sustainability has become too broad. And when it becomes so broad, it really becomes impossible to say this is sustainable or something is not sustainable. And they say that if you're talking about sustainability, really you should be talking about matters of environmental sustainability. So if we go back to their pyramid, we can see 1, definitely. 2, definitely. 3, yep. But once you get to 4, you're no longer dealing with the natural environment. So what are the implications for companies when we're dealing with this? When you're dealing with companies, you're thinking about really a number of different units of analysis, so things that we can focus on. You focus on companies in the relationship to societies, their technologies, buildings, industrial processes, and the idea of dealing with a sustainable organization becomes something like this. So individual organizations cannot become sustainable. Why? Because individual organizations simply contribute to the larger system in which sustainability may or may not be achieved. So one organization is not going to destroy an ecosystem. One organization is not going to kill all the koalas or make all of the spotted warblers in the UK disappear or pollute the atmosphere, create or stop global warming. So you can't have a sustainable organization. Why? Because we're talking about sustainability as natural environmental phenomena. So there's no such thing then as a sustainable organization. You're talking about systems. Are systems sustainable? Is a method of production sustainable? Is a type of energy sustainable, an energy system sustainable, not an individual organization? So the unit of analysis, the implication for a company is that you can't say a company is sustainable or not. Why? Because it's the wrong unit of analysis. We shift now to something different. The next category, and this is called sustainable development. Sustainable development is a different animal because you're using sustainable not with respect to a system, but with respect to a type of development. And the question then is, how are we going to develop the world or the planet or a country? And the idea is that we will develop in a way that is consistent with environmental sustainability, or at least not too far at odds to environmental sustainability. So sustainable development is in fact not just a national policy, but it's a global policy with respect to development. And what's happening here then is global public policy that uses this language that's become very familiar to us, and that is that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, so what you can see then is that it's a development policy. It's not focused on companies, and the unit of analysis is not the company. It's not necessarily ecological, but it's a policy for how development is going to be developed around the world. Global, I guess, a global idea of policy. And this goes back quite far in time now to 1987. So we're looking at about 35 years. So it's not a new idea. Just a minute, please. So the aim of the policy is really to inform national governments, not companies. It's basically to inform national governments of what the international community expects. It doesn't aim, it's not an aim for making money, and it's not aimed at businesses, but it's aimed at countries. So it's a much higher level policy. It's not just something that an organization can implement. Let's switch to the next term that we want to look at, and that's the question of corporate sustainability. This is interesting because what you can see here now is how these terms are starting to get jumbled together. And when we're talking about corporations, really, they're not talking about a legal entity. They're talking about an enterprise. So often a group of companies, or a company will make a number of subsidiaries, and this whole enterprise then will conduct its activity. And like all human activities, it will have externalities, it will have negative impacts on the environment, both social and natural environments. And so corporate sustainability then has as its unit of analysis the corporation. So let's think back about the previous two terms. With respect to sustainability by Marshall and Toffel, there was an environmental focus on harm to the species or to ecological systems. So the analysis, the unit of analysis there was the natural environment and general human activity. When we then shifted to sustainable development, what we were focused on was the development. How is the development of a country going to unfold? What principles will be followed? And that was an international policy from the international legal system, because the United Nations is at the heart of the international legal system. It's not a national legal system that's creating sustainable development, but the global policy is created in the international system by the United Nations, and then that is sent down to the nation state, to the different countries that implement that sustainable development through their own local domestic laws, through the national legal system. The unit of analysis in that framework is a global policy that is implemented by nations with respect to how the nations do their development policy, and it very broadly conceptualizes sustainability. So it includes what Toffel and Marshall and Toffel have excluded. So if you look at the Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals, you'll see things like eradication of poverty, women's rights, things like that, ethical elements to it. So that's in sustainable development. We now move from those two to this idea of corporate sustainability. And so the unit of analysis is not the ecosystem or human habits, and it's not development policy. The unit of analysis is an individual organization or business enterprise. And this term doesn't come from the ecologists, it doesn't come from global policymakers. It instead comes from a group of people who were involved in enterprises who were concerned about the environmental consequences of industrial production. And so it's evolved from that group of people who came to be what I refer to as corporate environmentalists. And they were often outside corporations or corporate enterprises and putting pressure on businesses, and businesses adopted or accepted the demands of these other parties. And there's a nice little quote here explaining the origins of corporate environmentalism. And it says that it's an evolution in what environmentalism means to the corporation. How is environmentalism conceptualized in what is seen as the proper role and response of the corporation with respect to environmentalism? So if you think of it as a human individual, what do you do about your views on environmentalism? Do you don't care about it at all? Use as much energy as you can. Throw your rubbish on the street. are you into fast fashion where you buy new clothing every week? Or do you think, well, yes, I am an individual person, but I think my proper role and my response to the environmental issues of the day require me to act in a certain way. So it's what's the proper role and response of you as a natural person, or in the case of corporate environmentalism, what's the proper role and response of this enterprise to the consequences or negative impacts on the environment of its activities. So corporate sustainability has a more modest scope. It's not attending to these questions of ethics. So for example, a corporate enterprise may say, look, we have a corporate sustainability program, and we use mostly recycled inputs. However, we don't hire any males, or we don't hire any people who come from Canada, or can have any one of these other issues that are considered important to sustainable development, ignored, and still call itself, hey, we do corporate sustainability. It's limited on the operations of individual organizations, individual business enterprises. So it's not industry-wide. It doesn't necessarily have any kind of big impact. And this is a critical distinguishing feature that Marwake has identified, Van Marwake, is that it's focused on value creation. So in other words, corporate sustainability, they'll do it only as insofar as it adds to the bottom line. So there's no concern about the corporation's impacts, negative impacts, if it doesn't improve the bottom line by addressing those impacts. Now, you end up with this weird little definition of corporate sustainability in Dillick and Hawkard. And look what they've done. They say corporate sustainability is meeting the needs of a firm's direct and indirect stakeholders, skip the bracketed part, without compromising its ability to meet the needs of future stakeholders as well. Well, this is a little bit problematic. Can you see where this definition has come from? You can see, basically, it's pinched the definition from the Brundtland report, where we find the definition of sustainable development, and just plugged in the words corporation. So it's changed the unit of analysis, and it's not looking at society broadly, a nation, the way sustainable development policy does, but it's looking only at the corporation stakeholders. So who might they be? If you think of the stakeholders of a corporation, you will often be looking at shareholders, of course, but you may look at employees as well. Could you look at contractors? Certainly. You could look at the community around. So it can be quite large, but it need not be. The definition of stakeholder is quite an elastic definition that can be constricted or expanded at will. So it's not especially helpful. If you say, well, direct and indirect stakeholders, you can see here again those categories: shareholders, employees, clients, pressure groups, communities, etc. Potentially the whole world. As I said, it can be elastic or inelastic. And if it's going to be the whole world, if you've got hundreds of thousands of employees in one enterprise, and you add that on, multiply it a couple of times, you could potentially have, well, then there's not going to be as much difference between corporate sustainability and say Marshall and Toffel's idea of sustainability. If that's the way it goes, then what's the point of adding the adjective corporate to the term sustainability? So you can see that the use of that term is not necessarily helpful. In fact, might be a little bit more more susceptible to greenwash. Now, there's another way of attacking this term, corporate sustainability. And what I've introduced to you so far is what's referred to as the weak version. There is another version of corporate sustainability that's referred to as a strong version of corporate sustainability, and that's put forward by Jafgel and Richardson. And they say that corporate sustainability includes legal and governance structures that recognize planetary limits. So in other words, they're saying that proper definition of the term corporate sustainability starts with the ecological limits of our existence and then starts to walk backwards. And that's interesting because one of the issues with sustainability broadly is that from an economic perspective, there are no limits to the planet. If you think about it, can you add another zero to a bank account? Yes, you can. And how many more can you add? Can you add one more? Yes. Can you add 5 more zeros? Yes. Can you add 1,000,000? Yes, it's unending. So from an economic perspective, there are no limits because economics is dealing with numbers. So in economic modeling, there's no need to think about planetary boundaries. This puts economics at odds with ecological thinking and thinking in other spheres of activity. So strong corporate sustainability says, well, we can't go with the economic model. We're going to deal with the the realities of living on a planet, the planetary limits, and that corporate sustainability must work within those limits, and it must have this ethical dimension addressing issues like human rights and social needs. So you see here a morphing or changing of corporate sustainability in the strong version. So what do we do then when we come to corporate social responsibility? Again, if we go back to Jaftel and Richardson's definition, we're not clear on the unit of analysis necessarily. That initial conundrum of that Marshall and Toffel have dealt with, which is that sustainability is actually a systems issue, not an individual organizational issue. So how then do we deal with that in the scholarly literature and in management practice? And the way we deal with that is we use another term, corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility is best understood as an effort to decrease the negative externalities, in other words, the negative impacts of our business activity, the social costs, and to increase the social benefits. So to improve what we're doing. So we can do that in a number of different ways. We can say, look, we're going to hire a better trained or a more inclusive workforce so that we distribute the wealth, the corporation's wealth, through wages more broadly. We can, instead of paying the absolute minimum on 0-hour contracts like Amazon, we can be a reasonable employer. And what corporate social responsibility is an interesting animal because it takes the international norms. So the legal norms created in the international system, the legal norms of the United Nations, and brings them down beyond the broad level of the nation state and brings them right down into the individual business enterprise. So it becomes an international private business regulation. And you can see then, what is it substantively? What does corporate social responsibility as private business regulation require the business enterprise to do? It starts at the bottom with economic responsibilities to be profitable. However, that's not sufficient. Those of you who have a greater familiarity with Italy would recognize something that's economically quite profitable, known as Cosa Nostra. There's some problems with that business. And you go up to the next level of responsibility, and that's legal responsibilities, which is obligation to obey the law. And this is really society's codification of right and wrong. Society says this is an acceptable behavior, this creates a sustainable society, and that's a corporation that's socially responsible is complying with that. But beyond that, a business that's socially responsible has ethical responsibilities. So an obligation to do what's right. So not the narrowest compliance with the law, but complying with the spirit of the law. And beyond that, a corporation that wants to say, look, we're a socially responsible enterprise, has to say, you know what, we're good citizens. We contribute resources to the community. We improve the quality of life. And this is coming from Archie Carroll's pyramid. And he says that this type of activity, this category of corporate social responsibility involves all four of these levels. So what we see that corporate social responsibility clearly addresses all of the main concerns that we've raised in the prior three definitions, environmental, social, and ethical, that it's connected to the organization's core missions and strengths. So it's not only dealing with the environmental impacts of the environmental issues, and it ignores the rest of what the organization is doing. It connects in with all of the organization, that it's flexible to context, so that as an organization or enterprise-focused activity or issue, it's going to be responding to where the activity of that organization is operating. And as a result, it's going to be dynamic in the sense that it's not going to be something that's dropped into the organization and you forget about it, but it's responsive to the situation in which it finds itself. What we see is that it's becoming increasingly mandatory around the world. There are other ways of looking at that, but for simplicity's sake, we'll leave it like that. So if we think about these four ideas, how can we sort of chart them out to make some sense of it? It's all well and good, Professor, you've given us this, this nice talk, but I'm a little confused on how these concepts relate. Is there some way that we can put them together? And that's what I'll show you on our next slide. And so if we think of all of these terms as dealing with, loosely speaking, sustainability in business, we can plot them out on a graph. And on the left-hand side, on the vertical axis, we see the policy focus. And we can see from the bottom, where it's very narrow focus only on the environment, to going up to the middle where it's environment and human rights, going up to the top of the vertical axis, we see that environmental, social, and governance issues, in other words, they're all dealt with. We can see which of the different terms or categories deals with which. So if we see at the bottom left-hand corner, we see a circle there, and the lowest words inside the graph, our common future. Those are sustainable development. That's sustainable development, and that comes from the 1989 Brundtland report, Our Common Future. And that's really what kicked off this idea, really got the discussion of sustainability going. If you look at the the horizontal axis, the policy scope, you'll see that on the left-hand side at the bottom, this is a policy instrument that's at the international level. So this is United Nations, or it could be regional level, so the EU or ASEAN, my part of the world. If we go along that horizontal axis, along the bottom, we can see the policy scope in the middle category is at the national level. If we continue on to the right at the bottom, we see organizational level. If we stay at that, along that lower axis on the far right, we see corporate sustainability weak form as dealing only with the environment. If we go up a level, we see corporate sustainability at the national level as a national policy, and that's the strong version. If we go back to the right hand, far right, and we see that's the organizational policy scope. So that unit of analysis is the corporation, and we go up, we see corporate social responsibility. So it's at the dealing in scope with the corporation, with the organization, but at that high level, it includes environmental, social, and governance issues. We go back to the left-hand side. If we go along that vertical axis, the bottom dealing just with the environment at the international level is our common future. If we go up to the top, we go to the Sustainable Development Goals and now Millennium Development Goals, which include environmental, social, and governance issues, but again, at the international level. So there we have sustainable development there. When you're looking at sustainability, that's the environment, that's Marshall and TOEFL, that's at the international systems level. If we go to the middle column, we see that corporate sustainability, the strong version, is at that higher level. That's a national policy. We go over to the right-hand column. At the top, we'll see corporate social responsibility. That's a term that's organizationally focused, deals with environment, social, and governance. We go to the bottom, we see corporate sustainability. That is an organizational policy dealing only with the environment on a for-profit basis. So what we're looking at now then is we have to think about this, what it is we want to do. What do you, in your role as a manager, or as working for the government, or as working for an NGO, what is it that you want to focus on? So there's 4 different discussions involved. There's a discussion about environmental sustainability. Is that what you want to do? Or are you interested in global development policy? That's something else. Maybe you're interested in a corporate environmental program. That's a different animal. Or maybe you're looking at a corporate or organizational interest or effort to address broader social costs. That's something different. So in the first instance, if you're interested in environmental sustainability, that's the Marshall and TOEFL questions of ecosystems. If you're interested in global development policy, that's United Nations or national development policy. How are we going to develop our country? If you're interested in how a particular business is dealing with its waste or doing its procurement with respect to environmental issues, that's corporate, in a corporate environmental program, that's corporate sustainability. If you're interested in how a business enterprise is interacting with all of its customers, employees, and the community, and how it's dealing with its environmental footprint, that's corporate social responsibility. And that's really what that last issue is. So I think understanding those 4 different terms, what they mean, what the concepts are, is critical for you to make a decision, for your enterprise or your government to make a decision about what it is they're trying to achieve and where to put their resources. So I'll leave it at that, and we will we'll take a couple of questions or comments at this point. Did that make sense to you? Put your hand up if it made sense. Maybe I should say put your hand up if you're still awake. That's always the big challenge for law lecturers. Wow, what a good group you guys are.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, guys, I don't know. Do you have any question for Ben?
Rosita.
Pardon? Okay, there is a first question from who are you? Harold. Harold, please. I can't hear.
He's asking who's available on Virtuale.
Yeah. The slides are on Virtuale and you can download the paper as well. Yeah.
That was an easy question.
Too easy. Okay, the guy up there, what's your name? Simone. Okay, please.
I was wondering if you could provide us some examples of when people actions compulsory.
Can you hear? I don't think so. Did you hear Ben? No. He was wondering if you can provide some examples about United Nations initiatives with reference to global policies that you mentioned. Ben, did you hear me?
No, I lost you there for a minute, Fede, but I'm back.
Okay. Now, Simone was wondering if you could maybe provide some examples of global policies with reference, like, for example, United Nations programs or similars.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to look at United Nations programs, you can think, for example, something like the United Nations Global Compact, which is a program that requires companies to register and then they do an annual update of what they have done to implement things like the Sustainable Development Goals. So a company may then take on maybe an anti-discrimination. So the United Nations Global Compact essentially takes a whole bunch of international conventions or treaties and makes them, in a sense, or provides principles from those treaties that companies can implement. So maybe a company is going to say, we're going to avoid discrimination against people with a disability and people with a physical disability. As a result, we'll create a program to employ, 3% of our workforce or 3% of our recruitment will be targeted for people with certain types of disabilities, maybe people in wheelchairs who are perfectly able to do the job. And what we'll do is we'll provide some, we'll make sure that they have an opportunity to earn a living like anyone else. So that's how something like that can work out. Does that answer your question, Simon? Yes? No? We're not at the Roman Forum. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he said yes, thanks. Sorry, I switched it off my microphone, otherwise there is the echo.
Thank you.
Guys, any other question you would like to pose? Not yet?
There are questions.
Looks like Alif, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. That's how we live for these hopeful things. It shows the optimistic side of corporate social responsibility. But what we know that most corporations, although the work they do under the name of CSR is beneficial, the damage they cause to the environment or their attitude towards their working, etc., doesn't match with this for most companies. And CSR is no more than just another marketing strategy. I want to ask, is the way to change this again through legal regulations or governance? Sorry, I might be a bit of pessimistic.
No, I'm not opposed to reality. I've worked in the space quite a while. I worked as a corporate lawyer. Um, one of the slides mentioned the idea that CSR is becoming more mandatory. And one way to think about this, actually, I need to agree with you that CSR can easily be greenwashing, and there's a good proportion of CSR that is greenwashing. But one of the things you have to think about is that this has really been a long process. So, for example, 150 years ago, if somebody was injured on the job, well, by my goodness, we better get their bodies out of the way so we can get somebody else in to make more money. Now, somebody said, that's wrong. That's not very responsible. So there was a law created for employees. Then there was, so that was becoming, some type of corporate social responsibility. Then there was some idea that, well, corporations should pay their employees and not steal their wages. So bit by bit, these ideas of what is responsible behavior, there's a discussion about it, and pressure is then to change that into laws. And bit by bit, corporate social responsibility expands. So today, there's no company in the developed world that would say, we keep killing our employees, but that's fine because there are lots of other bodies we can put in there to do the work. Why? Well, because there are laws in place. But how do those laws get enacted? And what's happened is the pressure over time for companies to behave responsibly. The definition of what does a responsible company look like has come a long way, from where it was okay to kill your employees to the point now where there's discussions about ensuring that companies are not discriminating, only providing supplies to employ certain types of people, discriminating among customers, or discriminating among suppliers, or discriminating with respect to employees. That there are regulations with respect to different types of environmental harms that are increasing step by step. And corporate social responsibility includes those mandatory bits, the social reporting, the sustainability reporting bits now that are basically increased as they become things that become reportable, then they get pushed into hard law. And what are companies being forced to report on in their sustainability reporting? Well, that gets added little by little over time. So we can think of it as a bit of a conveyor belt. Out here, you've got lots of greenwash, and that's your complaint, and it's a perfectly legitimate complaint. I don't know what the number is, but there's a massive amount of corporate social responsibility, CSR, that is greenwash. And what our job is to do is filter that, take it out of the greenwash category, put it into some type of reporting, voluntary reporting, then mandatory reporting, then creating legal liabilities around the behavior. And, it's a slow but steady process. I think it's frustrating for two reasons. One is, it takes a long time. It's slow. It's bit by bit. And, in our lifetimes, most of you are younger people. You're in your 20s or 30s. It's hard to say, well, gee whiz, 100 years ago, you're going 100 years ago, they didn't even have, mobile phones. They didn't have phones at all, or certainly not ubiquitous phones. So 100 years just seems like crazy long. So I think it's hard from that type of perspective to see how this works. The second thing is we actually don't have time to deal with things like the environmental crisis, like climate change. And if we're going to wait for corporations to change their behavior with respect to greenhouse gases, we're all going to fry. So there's lots of reasons for hard legislation at the national level. Interestingly, we see some corporations, in fact, pressing for this. Why? Why would they do that? Well, there's lots of reasons. They may think they can have a competitive advantage. if they're a company that says, gee whiz, we're spending $1 billion on fossil fuels, if we could get those subsidies to sustainable energy, we can make more money because we can generate our own and sell some more. There's all kinds of reasons. But it's interesting to see companies actually getting involved and putting pressure on governments to create more legislation around corporate social responsibility. And I'll tell you something. It's always important to be optimistic. Always important to be optimistic. It's the best way through life.
Thank you so much.
You go ahead.
In the developed world, I see that there is the laws and there are regulations in place, and there might be more like social aspects to be like regarded, but that's like outsourcing now happening, and is that regulated in supply chain for countries in Southeast Asia or other countries where there are no regulations, there is child labor? How can the companies be regulated?
Ben, did you hear?
No, please repeat it.
I think in summary, what's your name? Mark? Marcus is asking, okay, but there are many places in the world, like for example in Asia, where there are not regulations, for example, with reference child labor and so forth. So how can we make sure that these things do not happen?
Especially like big companies like outsource.
Especially big company when they outsource service products, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, that's a fair question. Nike, the big shoe company that doesn't own any shoe factories, it's a brand. So when you look at those types of things, they're they require a little more creative thinking. I'll just point out that I work with people in Indonesia and the Philippines on these types of issues, and they're quite concerned about them. And in fact, there are laws around a lot of these things. There are issues with enforcement of those laws. And I think that in the developing world, as opposed to the developed world, there are different issues and different priorities. So, for example, it's a terrible thing to say, but child labor is extremely important in parts of the developing world because there's insufficient income to feed the family and feed the kids. So if the child is taken out of the labor force, how is that family going to feed itself? You can't just remove the child. So what do? Things you can do are you create school programs where the child goes to school for half the day, works half the day, or you can put restrictions on the type of work the child does. You can create a school program and have a food supplement for families that send their kids to school. These corporations can do this, businesses can do things like that. How do we make that happen from our side of that divide on the developed world? Basically, social media pile-on. Social media pile-ons are extremely effective. Another way, this is another area of my research. You can read about this in Australian Journal of Corporate Law, where there's very, very interesting activism, shareholder activism. And what happens there, you get a group of people, they don't have to own a lot of shares, but create a little organization that collects only the votes of those shares. So if you collect the votes of, in the Australian situation, of 100 shareholders, you're actually able to put pressure on the company to address these things. You can say, look, we want assurance that your supply chain doesn't have child labor in it. One of the things you can look at I don't know your jurisdictions, I'm sorry, but in the Australian jurisdiction, we have a Modern Slavery Act. And what that does, it creates legal liabilities for companies with respect to their supply chain. And it's this can go all the way up. There's been issues, for example, in Tesco, a UK company, with respect to slavery in their fishing. So where fishermen have been held as slaves on boats for years and required to go fishing. How do you deal with those issues? Again, you put pressure, buy shares in the company, or simply ask people for the votes on their shares. Most people are not busy voting their shares. They couldn't care less. So there's zero cost to them. And if you're able to pull these shares together, you're able to put proposals to the companies that directors will respond to because they put the directors at risk. Or at risk of losing their jobs or at risk of legal liabilities. So those are a couple of important ways that we're in the developed world, we're able to attack these problems. Does that help you, Marcus?
Yeah, I said thank you. Okay, guys, any other question you would like to pose? Not really? Yeah? Javier? No, who is talking?
Also, Javier, want to ask a question, but also I don't know.
Laura?
Yes, I am Laura. So
Yeah.
I go first. Okay. My question is, because in Europe, we can see now that there is a huge trend in policy, especially in European policy, in these sustainability issues with the Green Deal and so on. And I wanted to ask, how is it in Australia? Like, if there are similar action plans, strategies from high level.
All right. I don't want to say too much. There's an Australian in the class who may be end up a victim of angry Europeans. But having said that, there's something very, very interesting happening with the EU. So the EU is very progressive in its thinking and actions on this. And what the EU is doing is it's taking leadership in terms of the development of trade agreements. It's taking leadership now that the US has, fallen into its turmoil with Donald Trump. And the EU has taken the leadership in developing free trade. And what's interesting about the EU's free trade agreements is that it's creating new rights and new obligations with respect to sustainability. And as a result, countries that want to have free trade agreements with the EU are being forced to raise their standards to meet EU standards with respect to sustainability. Now, this is great in terms of people who are concerned about sustainability issues and Australia. So the Australian government is an extremely conservative government, particularly with respect to the environment. And that's kind of a perverse saying. Endangered as an endangered fact, an endangered ecosystem, I'm sorry, but the Australian government has opposed that. The reason is that the Australian economy has been very dependent on digging holes. So we dig holes for iron ore and we send it off. We dig holes for coal and send it off. Then we dig oil wells, send it off, and LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, and sell that off. As a result, where the rest of the world says, gee whiz, we don't want more coal, the conservative Australian policy has been to oppose that. And I can tell you, it's a great embarrassment to many Australians, and the vast majority of Australians are deeply opposed to this conservative government dragging its feet on ecological issues. Australia actually at one point was a global leader in sustainable energy. There's hope that Australia will shift policy as a result, in part, of signing up with EU for a free trade agreement, as well as what I was talking about earlier. Some of the largest companies, so some of the largest miners like BHP Billiton, which along with a number of other mining companies, has put pressure on the federal government to adopt the Paris goals and develop real steps for implementing those goals at a policy level and beyond. So I think that's about the best information I can give you in a little summary like this.
No, ecco, switch it on. I don't think it's going to work anyway. You try.
I was just kind of wondering, sort of building on that topic there that you're talking about, what sort of roles can states in Australia play to change that mentality at a federal level? Like, is there any power that they have to sort of make their own frameworks, if you will?
Did you hear? Yes.
Yes, I did. Maybe it was just the Australian accent that came shooting through. I don't know. So the question is about how Australia is structured from a legal point of view. So the way Australia is structured from a legal point of view is there is a federal government, which is the Commonwealth Government of Australia, and then we have the different states, the different jurisdictions. I think in Italy you have different provinces. And each of our states has its own legislature, court system, etc. And so who has what power is a matter of the Constitution that gives some legal powers to the Commonwealth and other legal powers to the states. So what the states are able to do, they're able to pass laws with respect to the matters under their own jurisdiction. So they can set standards for how, the rules for what type of cars are going to be allowed to drive. So, or does it have to be an electric car? They can create incentives for electric cars. There's all kinds of things the states can do. When you look at national governments on these things, it can be quite discouraging and a source of pessimism, not only in Australia, but elsewhere in the world. But what's very interesting is when you look at on the ground, you can see city governments creating sustainability initiatives. So, for example, city governments may create a recycling program. City governments may create a forestry program or a parks program with reforestation. Cities can create public transport that reduces the carbon impacts of private transportation. So there's all kinds of initiatives that can be taken at different levels of government that can have very significant impacts on sustainability at state and national levels. And what you see, for example, in the US, is you look at there are coalitions and organizations of city mayors, like the mayor of New York City, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Chicago. They'll get together and they'll develop policy around sustainability issues and implement those in the cities, regardless of the Trumpites, the people who are in deep denial of what's happening outside of their little echo chambers. So there's another reason for optimism.
Javier has his hand up.
Yes.
And waiting so long, he's still awake still. Good.
Thanks for the presentation, Professor. My question is, how does the state in developing countries establish international companies that have declared to apply corporate social responsibility, but still are unable to manage a spill, like happening with Repsol in Peru last month?
Fede, can you help me with that one? I had a lot of echo.
Ooh, sorry.
I can repeat it. No problem.
There we go.
Okay. The question was, how does the state in developing countries can punish international companies that have declared to apply corporate social responsibility, but still are unable to manage no spill, like what happened with Repsol in Peru last month?
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm still having a bit of echo or I'm not quite getting it. Fede, can you help me on this, please?
Ben, sorry, I didn't hear very well either. So
Javier, could you type it in?
I can. Yeah, that's okay.
Or if someone's got his, if someone understands his question, could you please tell it, just speak it out for him, please? Ah, there we are. Okay, yeah. Okay, look, you know, I wish I had an easy answer for this one, Javier. That's it's a massive problem, and essentially, the state has to be willing to take jurisdiction over these companies. Now, one of the ways that this has happened has been through, in the American context, through something called the Alien Tort Claims Act. So this is a specialist area of law where there's been some harm or injury, and it allows injured parties to bring actions against the party that does the injury. So in a case like Repsol in Peru, there's really two angles on it. One is simple, or I shouldn't say simple, but you could just go right down the path of a tort. So a tort, remember, is a non-criminal injury. So there's been an injury or harm to the environment, damage to the environment that Peru, the country, has against that particular company. So it can go that way. The other way, and this is something that's where you're trying to deal with corporate social responsibility, if you're saying that a company has made representations to a government or another party that it has certain policies in place and that country or other party is relying on those representations, then it's possible for that company to be liable for those representations. So if a company represents itself as socially and environmentally responsible, so environmentally responsible as a subcategory of the broader category of social responsibility, where it causes that type of pollution, a court may hold it responsible. But I think one of the fundamental issues in all of this is this question of jurisdiction. So what that means is, Javier, can your neighbors, can somebody, can your neighbor's mom give you a spanking, discipline you for being a naughty boy?
No, I don't think so.
Well, let's ask your classmates. How many people think the neighbor can discipline Javier? Can give him a spanking? I think your fellow people in class like you. But no, she doesn't have that right. She doesn't have that power. So with respect to jurisdiction, the question is who has the right to bring that company to court for that action? And what will happen when you're dealing with multinational companies is that the local company may go bankrupt, and the company that's got the money is the overseas company. And their courts may have difficulty chasing liability into another jurisdiction. So these are fairly complex issues of law, jurisdiction, of company law structure, etc. But there are problems with that. I think Um, I mean, this goes back to one of the, I think the 1980s disaster of Union Carbide in Bhopal, or you've seen it uh, in Peru with Chevron, um, Chevron Corporation, where they've got away with real environmental disaster, and the Peruvian governments have been unable to hold those companies accountable. And this really just ends up with sort of those two angles where there's lobbying, corporate social responsibility, lobbying to change it from voluntary to mandatory, and these questions of shareholder resolutions, putting pressure on companies, and social media pylons.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any other
You're welcome.
questions, guys? No? Ben, I think anyone has any other questions. So I really thank you so much for your presentation and for the effort, because it's evening time in Canberra. So really, thank you very much for the effort. Now, next year, we wait for you in present. We want a present seminar.
Excellent.
I hope that will be possible.
Likewise. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Fede, and thank you to your class for their attention and their comments and questions. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for your attention. I think we are going to have a break, and then I've got 3 activities. Let's see what we can do. But meanwhile, let's have 10-15 minutes break, okay? Guys, Tom, we are going to have a break, so we will start again in about 10-15 minutes. Okay, guys, shall we start again? Il male sta mascherina mi ha ucciso le orecchie. Okay, so we are back. We are back. Okay, guys, this is Susanna Tinti. She's your tutor.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And she will help me with this course. So if you need again me or her, you can always contact us through emails or when we are in class. Now, I would like, I need a presentation. First of all, I need a presentation. I would like to introduce you briefly the working group activity, and then we can talk in much that next time. Allora, qua non entra, perché non entra? Dovrebbe entrare. Ok, andiamo. Guys, I'm sharing the screen, so at home you should now be able to see my presentation. Is that the case?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So, as I said on the first day, in terms of exam, this year you have an exam on the 4th of April. The exam will be in presence for the people that can be here in class. There are some exceptions, and I show you the website where you need to have a look if you are an exception. However, it will be in class and it will be worth the 60% of the total exam. Instead, the 40% will be a working group activity. So, given we are halfway through the course, I would like to present you what I was thinking of group class activity. Group working activity. First of all, there is a deadline, meaning that the group work activity must be presented by you on the 23rd of March, which is the last day that we meet. So you have, let's say, from today up to the 23rd of March. On the 23rd, your group, one person or more people within the group will present the findings. Also, on the same day, you have to send me giving here in the class a print copy of both the presentation and the report, or let's call it paper, of your paper, because it's a sort of research that I'm asking to you to undertake. So presentation and reports or paper are due on the 23rd of March. And make sure, of course, there are all the details of the group members on the first page. For the groups, after my presentation, we will do the group. So you will know with who you should work. Okay, project outline. What I am expecting from you. You should develop a research. This is a research, of course, on the topics that we are seeing together, that refers to how organization can disclose in a sustainable manner. Because next week we will refer to 2 specific guidelines that are the main guidelines or frameworks organizations can put in place in order to disclose: the integrated reporting and the GRI guidelines. We will talk well about the contents next week, once I will have to introduce you these guidelines and frameworks. But to let you have an overview, this is what I'm expecting. You will have a certain amount of time to present your findings, so you cannot add too many slides. At least sorry, here there is 6 references. Okay. At least you should handle a present. Sorry. Okay. It was down there. I am just decreasing a bit the size. No. Okay. So 6 slides, but what did I do? No. Allora, cosa ho combinato? Io ho la presentazione, ok. No, questo non salvare. Oh, ecco. Here we are. Okay. So at least, yes.
So do we have to use hard references?
Do we have?
You have to reference them at the hard.
Yes, please. At least 6 slides. I'm sure, usually, because this is not the first year I ask this sort of activity, usually students tend to add like 20 slides. Don't do that, it's too much. So you need to indicate just the very relevant topics that you think are interesting, relevant. Also, well, let's go on. So in the first slide, you need to indicate what organization you are analyzing. I will help you in terms of finding an organization to analyze, because I'm going to suggest you where to look in a couple of databases where you will find organizations that actually use integrated reporting, GRI, that use these frameworks and guidelines. So you can have a look in one of them and one of those and see what organization you would like to analyze, or just have a look online. So the organization you want to analyze, the activity to undertake. So what are you looking for? We are going to think about that aspect next week, because first I need to introduce you the guidelines. But for example, you want to understand the evolution of environmental disclosure in a specific organization, for example, Coca-Cola. So What is the evolution, the longitudinal analysis of environmental reporting with reference this company? What has changed in the last 10 years, for example? So observe something. You need to have a clear research question that you want to focus on. So which the activity to undertake and which report to be analyzed. Reports because when you analyze these sort of aspects, the easiest way to go about is download the public sustainability report or la DNF, non-financial disclosure statement or the integrated report, which are public available. Download these documents and look for whatever you are interested. Okay. Other way could be used. You could interview people. You could engage with the company, but this is too complicated. Don't do that because it's basically impossible to engage with an organization in 2 or 3 weeks, organize meeting and so forth. So don't do that. Even for a thesis is too much, honestly. It's very difficult. So let's go on. The period the report relates to. So you should indicate if you have downloaded a document to what period of time this report refers to. Usually it's 1 year. It could be longer or different. So you need to highlight that. During what time frame the report was published? Usually when there are non-financial disclosure, this aspect can vary a lot in the sense that in theory the non-financial disclosure, the non-financial statement, the sustainability report is part of the disclosure of the company, so it should go hand in hand with the financial statements that get published at the beginning of the year, let's say April, May. What happens is that often these documents got published with the jet lag of 6 months or something like that. So October, November, and so forth. So anyway, highlight when it gets published. Highlight what framework or standard the specific organization you have observed has applied. Maybe this organization has applied different standards. This is quite common, or particularly just one. Anyway, you should discuss which one has been used. So this with reference the first part. Second part, identify what the analysis is about. Key topics to study, elements to look for. For example, environmental disclosure. So once you know the organization you want to analyze, you need to make your mind about what aspect you want to observe. How can you decide that? Well, first of all, you need to know more or less, you need to have a picture of all the elements that you can analyze, and you can have this picture next week. But it could be social aspects, environmental aspect, ethical aspects, intellectual capital aspect, and so forth. Next week, we will talk specifically about these topics. So this is very important, however, because if you do not identify in a proper manner what you want to analyze, then all the study gets complex, let's say. And this is very true even in a thesis that you will have to develop in the next future. Make sure it is very clear the focus of your research. So you are analyzing a specific topic. Even in, for this aspect, many times students tend to broaden the aspect. This is very normal. I did as well when I wrote my thesis, when I wrote my PhD thesis. I wanted to broaden. No, don't do that. It's going to be just very confusing and not worth. So you have to focus on something that is relevant to you or that you are interested. Environmental disclosure. Okay, second stage, slide 3. Identify the method and how the analysis is being developed. You should look at this document following a scientific method. Don't just have a look like that. For example, the other day we had a quick study, a quick working group looking, I think, ethical issues in a specific report. I don't remember anymore the report. That is to have an idea, but you should look based on a scientific method. There are a number of scientific methods to apply. I think the most useful for you is the content analysis. So you should have a look in the literature about this method. What is the content analysis? How to go about in collecting data based on content analysis. How to frame an analysis based on content analysis. So identify the method and how the analysis has been developed, for example, content analysis. I might present you a paper next week as well, where I use content analysis, if can be helpful for you, just to have a look, to have an idea, okay? I will do that. Present your findings. So once you have applied your your method, you come out with a number of findings. You need to structure these findings to highlight what it emerges from the analysis. This is the first thing. Second thing, you might want to critique your findings. This is very difficult. So if you do, very well. If you don't do, that's all right. How can you critique? You can use theories. You can use other sources of information. For example, you have looked at a specific report which is published by the company. However, if you look on the media, on not the website of the company, but the media, the newspapers, the whatever you find available on that specific aspect, article, etc., we can have a different story. So you can sort of put in relation the two different stories in order to enrich your findings. Or you can, with your findings, you can have a look at similar papers, research that you find in the literature to see if previous studies are in line with your findings or against your findings. You can use these tools. Other sources of information such as the web, media, and so forth. Finally, the last slide about the study is the conclusion. The conclusion is basically like a very short, a snapshot of what is the study about and what did you find, and what is original. What are we learning from what you have found? It's a successful story or not. It depends what you find. The very final slide is about the references. Why the references? Because I would like you to engage with the literature. And for this, to this aim, I showed you the other day how to look for papers in the Unibo website, our library, in order to download a paper that can be useful to you to write this research. This working group activity you do with other people, so you don't do by yourself. It's not a standalone. So you have to cooperate to each other, divide activities, come back and meet in order to discuss what you have found. You can meet online as well. I mean, a small group of people, for small groups, it's easy to meet online and discuss items. This activity will be worth the 40% of your exam. So if one group gets, I don't know, 27, it's 27 for each member of the group, okay? So you need to collaborate each others. And also I think that this exercise, I hope that this exercise will help you in thinking about how to frame a research, which will be your next research will be most probably your thesis. So if you follow this stage, it will help you in developing your thesis. Of course, you don't have to do a thesis on this, but it's to frame a project, a research project. Okay, so let's see. Actually, up to here, do you have any question for me? No? All good? Yes, questions.
When are you going to tell us the groups? So, you know, we can start to work.
In 10 minutes?
Sorry.
Yes?
Thanks. How many records we have analyzed from a company?
How many?
How many records from a
It's
company?
up to you, because I'm going to suggest something, but I'm going to give you flexibility as well. Up to you. It depends, I think, also what you are looking for. If it is something very specific, probably it is worth to extend the analysis. If instead you are looking for something of very holistic, let's say all the topics covered by, I don't know, sustainability, it's going to be more complex. So most probably it's impossible to do for 10 years, or I mean, it's not worth it, it's too much work. You cannot do that in this amount of time. Okay, other questions on this slide? Yes?
So this is about the grading system.
You know that I can't hear anything?
Is it math one?
Yes.
Yes, there is no one in front.
It's to do with the grading system. So what's the pass rate?
Pass rate? Yes, in Italy we have marks that go from 18 to 30 with honor as maximum. So as minimum grade, you should get 18. I tell you, based on previous work group activities, no one got 18. Impossible. Because what happens is usually students are really committed in order to do the best, so they do a lot of effort. And also because your mark is related to all the other people, so you don't want to do bad and, you know, affect the others. Okay, so usually, you know, are quite positive, the marks.
I was just a bit confused in 627, and I forgot that the Italian grading system is not the same as the English grading system.
No, yes. We have we have in this class people from different backgrounds where the system are very different. I put I'm going to detail later in the next slide, but it will be based on 30. And of course, the maximum is 30 with honors. We say 30 lode. 30 lode. I would like to give many 30 lode. So you need to do your best and get the maximum. Okay, class group presentation. So you work in groups, you develop your activity, you present your activity on the 23rd of March. I think there will be about 60 people that will give, that will set the exam during early April. Now we are going to see that, but about 60. So it's going to be, I think, 5 people per group, 12 groups. I think 5 people, not more. Well, if there is one alone, I can put with another group, but more or less, I would like to prepare groups of 5 people. Each person, in terms of report, can write 1 page. So maximum 5 pages. I don't want to see something longer because we don't really need. If you want, it could be shorter. You really need to put what is relevant. And, for example, let's go back to the environmental aspect. You want to analyze the environmental disclosure of a company. You know, if you find a sustainability report which is 200 of pages, maybe the environmental aspect are 50 pages. So you don't have to copy and paste pieces of that report in order to enrich your analysis. You have to analyze based on the methods. You can make an example if you want, but one, not, you know, all the report. Allora, this part of the assessment will involve you working in groups. I'm going, next week I present you the guidelines, the frameworks, and also I will let you have a bit of time in order to start working in the class. And Susanna and I will be in the class with you in order to help you. Susanna is a young expert because she has developed a thesis on these topics, and she has already a year of experience at what was that? KPMG. Consultancy agency. Developing activities related to these topics, so she will help me and you. And also she's going to present next Wednesday a case study, let's say, on integrated reporting. So you will see the empirical aspect as well. I think it will be useful for you. So prepare and present a range of different topics to the class, which you will find in a document called the IR or SR or non-financial statement, NFS. Okay. The class presentation should be developed. Okay, the presentation that you should send me and to me on the 23rd should be in PowerPoint. If you want, you could use different devices or tools. For example, Prezi. I don't know if you know. It's a bit difficult to print, so it's up to you. I need something to evaluate, so I need something printed as well, so up to you, yes?
So we should prepare a presentation as well as a written report, or just
something too?
Some written report.
Yes, yeah. This is the presentation for the class, and the report must be maximum 5 pages, 1 for each student. So it's not much, but it must be relevant.
Professor, sorry, maybe I missed the information, but the report has it to have a structure, like a precise structure. or we are free to see how to structure it?
You have a presentation, and the report is, let's say, a summary of your presentation. So I would suggest to follow the contents of the presentation, not invent something new. So the presentation is going to be performed in class, and the report is written in, let's say, or more details or summarized, I don't know, but it's the same.
We can take like the structure of a scientific paper, for instance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, exactly. A soft copy of your slides and report to be submitted on the 23rd to me. And put in CC Susanna.
Mm-hmm.
See?
So,
Marcus.
So when you were saying about the written report, so when you get in a summary of a presentation, do you need like presentation itself?
Well, in the presentation, you are presenting your research.
Okay.
So the report, I named that actually a paper because it's the research. So you needed to write the main key aspect of the research in this paper.
Okay.
Is a report, is a paper, is a summary, I don't know how to call it, but it's your research. And this research, my suggestion is that follows the presentation, which follows the previous stages, steps that I have indicated, to be sure that cover everything. So the presentation has been performed by 5 people. You can decide the number of slides, but of course you have 10 minutes to present. So there are 60 people, 12 groups to be presented all on the last day. 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 5 people.
No. Each group.
Yeah, so that means for
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Just one person.
Yes. Consider that in scientific conferences, people have more or less 15 minutes to present a paper that is a research of 2-3 years. So I'm sure you can do that. But we will measure this quality as well. Okay. The exact format of the presentation is up to you, and you should reflect the particular topics that you want to analyze. So each group can cover different topics. I and Susanna will be helping during the next units, and will allow a bit of time in the class for you to work together, to start to work together, advising some, I don't know, supporting you with suggestions, etc. You will be assessed on the quality of your research, the contents analyzed, the presentation performed, and the related paper you will be preparing for us. Okay. Okay, this is any question on this slide as well? No. In terms of assessment, because it's very difficult to assess working group activities, it's something that is a qualitative performance. So I have outlined a number of themes that I will look in your presentation, in your report, in your research, in order to evaluate your work. Okay? And here I made this list. Each of the following points is worth 5 points. I said all together you need to reach 30. Okay? So maximum. Of course, if everything is brilliant, it will be 30 with honors, but all are 30. First aspect, quality of your research, meaning the structure of the research, a clear research question, and the method used. We will evaluate all these aspects. Maximum, you get 5 points if it is really well developed. If it is not really well developed, you can get 1 or 0. But it means that you didn't use a method. The paper does not have any structure, so must be really poor, okay? This is the first aspect. Second aspect, contents of the research. What is the research about? And clear related findings. So given your research question, you have established specific research findings. This is maximum evaluated 5 points as well. Your presentation, clear and structured presentation, the relevance to use the 10 minutes, not 20. If all of you use 20 minutes, we need 6 hours. We don't have 6 hours. We have 3 hours. And I thought, 10 minutes just for the presentation and 5 minutes to upload and, put everything here or, Yes?
Do we have to expect also question and answer session after the
There could be question and answers. I might pose you questions, of course, and your colleagues in the class can pose questions. Usually it does not happen. I mean, it happens that I pose questions, but usually what happens is that all the others are like reading, etc., because they need to present after you. I'm joking. Of course, you can pose questions. You must pose questions. Yes. This is good if you do that. You're welcome. Your presentation, clear sales presentation, the use of literature to analyze or support your analysis. Why I put this? This is very important. Now, if you want to analyze, for example, the environmental disclosure of a company, why would you do that? Why would you use a part that is the 40% of your exams? But normally, when you develop a research, you do that because it is a relevant aspect for a number of reasons. I don't know, because there is a need to understand how companies are behaving in terms of environmental matters, or there is a need to understand how to improve environmental policies to from a national level or an international level. You can add all the motivation you find that you think are relevant. And of course, you don't have to invent. You find these already in the literature. So, again, you have to look at the literature and see what articles can be particularly useful for your analysis. How to look at the literature. Literature is very is huge. So you need to look. I'm going to suggest you a few journals. Based on those journals, you can look for keywords to see a number of articles that can be, focus on what you are looking for. Then you don't have to read all the articles. Each article has an abstract at the beginning that are 2 minutes to read. So it's really quick. If the abstract looks extremely interesting, you might want to read the conclusion to see what is the contribution of the paper, or the introduction to see how it has been framed, or the method, because that paper used the method you want to use. So it depends what is relevant in the abstract that you are reading. So you don't have to read 100 of articles, impossible. But there are in a group 5 people, so you can do a little bit of effort in order to read some articles to see if they can be useful or not in framing your studies, supporting your findings, supporting the method you use, supporting or not your conclusion, and so forth. The use of literature, the critique of your findings, I talked about that earlier. The use of, you might use benchmark organization to analyze. So if you analyze, I don't know, Coca-Cola, you can have a look to a competitor in order to see what are the differences on a specific aspect and not on everything. Or if you do undertake a longitudinal analysis, you might want to observe the evolution of a topic, I don't know, the ethical aspect in 10 years, in the last 10 years. The analysis of concept study in previous unit. You might want to, this is more difficult, to observe, for example, if they have used, I don't know, 8 radar scan in order to scan the environment, but these are internal internal activities, so it is difficult that they disclose this aspect. They might disclose something, but it's more difficult to find in a public report, okay? However, they can disclose how they scan the environment in order to understand the need of stakeholder. So stakeholder engagement. You can observe as focus of your research the stakeholder engagement of a company. So how the company is engaging with stakeholders, the matrix they develop in order to find what are the relevant items in this regard, issues to analyze. Then the contribution of the study. What are the findings? What are the conclusions? What do we learn about that study? What did you observe that was really interesting in your study? You can analyze major organizations or small and medium enterprises, very relevant. Because for many major organizations do these activities. Just a few small and medium enterprises undertake these activities. So I would be interested in understanding what a small and medium enterprises does in the name of, I don't know, integrated reporting. That's it. Questions? All clear? Now, very quickly now, guys at home, it's all good? Did you follow?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it is super late. Now, I need to do other 2 things at least. So I think we are going to go at home not early than 12 today. First of all, let's see who are the people that would like to undertake this activity. Okay, now, because I've got a list of students, I'm pretty sure that not all of them want to take part to these activities for a number of reasons. But before to organize the groups, I need to know who is interested in doing that, okay? If there are people that are not connected and not in the class today, they can tell me as soon as possible. You can tell to your friends or write on WhatsApp, I don't know, your devices, that they can still tell me if they want to do that. But at this stage, Sergio Aguerra Arias, do you want to undertake this activity? Is Sergio connected? Here in the class? No, we don't know. Okay. Anar Aliyev, I apologize for the pronunciation of your name. For sure, I will get all wrong, I tell you. Let's increase so you can see. No, too much, too much. Ok. Allora, Aliev Anare, are you connected or are you in the class? No. Ok. Asif Istike. I suppose I didn't get the right list of students. She was here?
È una di quelle che ha fatto la domanda prima.
Ah, ok. Asif, are you connected? You are? Everybody can add how?
On Google Docs, you can add the document and everyone is allowed to modify it.
Yes.
So it may be easier for us.
I can, si può usare la chat, si può mettere il file nella chat, però dopo tutti hanno le... No, I think for a privacy reason, in theory I shouldn't do that, because here there is the name, the matricular number, and the email, surname of everybody, so I don't think...
Can you just, with another file with just surname and name, then you copy the whole set of emails, you upload it to OneDrive, and then you share it with the whole course?
Yeah, you can do that.
Can do that? Yeah. Si vede il nome, si vede il nome.
Mettiamo solo nome e cognome, cancelliamo le
ok, so we'll do that. Lo riesci a fare adesso?
I was just saying this because I see that it's not really efficient right now.
Well, yeah, no, I actually use documents that other people in other university can change. So I know this is possible, but not this document. I will get rid of the matricular number and I will leave...
Well, another professor did, he just said, hey, you can write me a mail until Friday if you want to participate.
Yeah, but in this case, I will have 70 mails. If I miss one, it's a little bit of drama. We can do that, I don't know. Lo vuoi fare te?
Sì.
Ora, let's do this. If you can send an email just immediately after this class to her. So I don't leave anything. No, I'm joking. But if she knows that all the emails need to arrive, in sort of half an hour, they will be all, and the others, of course, that are not in the class, they will write whenever. Come preferisci, Susanna? Va bene che si ti scrivono? Sì. Okay, so guys, if you want to take part to the working group, write to Susanna Tinti. I put her name here. Allora, Susanna.tinti 2 at Unibo.
Sì, Unibo.
Okay, guys at home, if you can do this even now, so she gets all your emails in once.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We could go also on with the list that you have here on Excel. So maybe only the people which do not listen to to what we are talking about send the email, so she will not get like 70 mails.
Sorry, we didn't understand much of what...
Le dico in italiano che così si sente meglio, forse.
Come?
Le dico in italiano.
Proviamoci.
Ok, no, dicevo, magari intanto possiamo andare avanti con la lista in Excel e chi adesso è in presenza, insomma, da la presenza, insomma, di fare un nuovo progetto e gli altri mandano la mail, così non le arrivano 70 mail.
No, ci mettiamo 8 ore. Ok, ascolta, no, sarebbe un'idea, però se lei ci manda un'email, Susanna la registra, che così abbiamo anche qualcosa di scritto, che ci ricordiamo, forse è meglio. Quindi questa è l'email, susanna.tinti2@unibot.it. You can write an email now or just at 12 after we finished and say, yes, I want to take part to the group work. If you are not interested, don't write to her. Let's do this. They are all doing this now, so in 2 seconds you will have your email box full. Okay. The Wi-Fi? Sai che? È bella, perché non si connette? Allora, si può chiedere al ragazzo che qua fuori, io sulla tecnologia, se no... Sì, ma non c'è bisogno di saperlo adesso. No, this group, when we get all the emails, let's wait today. Tomorrow we put online the first draft of the groups, and if there are still people that would like to take part to this activity, of course, they will send to her an email again, and they can, of course, take part. Remember that next time we meet next week, okay? Not this Friday, because we have postponed this lecture, this unit, this class to the last day of the course. So this Friday don't come, there is no one, okay? Okay, so given that you are sending to her this, I would like to introduce you very briefly. I would like to finish actually the topic of ethics, but there is not much to still say about. Ok, dunque, presentazione. Lezione. Okay, so we are still on the topic of ethics applied to businesses. To introduce the topic, I would like to make an example. So when ethical issues can happen in businesses, we have an example of the performance of Pfizer that I'm sure every one of you knows well, unfortunately. So a few years ago, 5 years ago, Pfizer is a drug company, and they had a drug for epilepsy. Now, they sold this drug to UK people, but not with the label of Pfizer. Debranding basically the drug, making it a generic product. They didn't have to assess the cost of the drug, so they were able to sell the price. They were able to sell the drug 17 times higher than the normal drug. That was found by the UK regulators, and they got fined. However, this is an unethical behavior in companies that can take place. And there are many, unfortunately, examples of unethical behavior. So the issue is why organizations behave in an ethical manner, and most importantly, do we have tools or something in order to prevent these behaviors? So what I can say is that corporate culture and ethical climate signal what is considered right or wrong within the during the operation of an organization. What is corporate culture? The corporate culture is how a company acts to undertake its activity. It can be considered a blend of ideas, traditional practices, and so forth. Basically, it's a way of life of how people behave within a specific organization, indicating what is considered right or what is considered wrong. Instead, the ethical climate is part of the corporate culture and is the ethical tune of the company, because it represents the unspoken understanding among employees of what is acceptable behavior or not. It is very important to consider these two aspects, because they set the tune of how we can operate. So if managers, employees, etc. face ethical issues within a company, they can operate, they can act on the basis of different paths. For example, if an ethical issues arise, organization, managers, employees, etc. can act on the basis of the egoism approach, meaning they act for a self-interest, and they are driven by an economic interest, most likely. Otherwise, if an ethical issue arise in a company, employees, managers, governance, and so forth can act on the basis of benevolence. So managers that face ethical issues might act to please the close groups, close colleagues, or the team that is working with them, performing an activity that is based on a team interest, highlighting the need for social responsibility at the best. Or otherwise, other times that an ethical issue arises within a company, the company can approach that on the basis of principles. So to choose how to behave, the behavior is driven by principles, for example, fairness and so forth. So these these are called ethical criteria, are based on the basis of the way companies operate within its system. It's the component of the ethical climate. So we have spoken about how to behave if an ethical issue arises, but where an ethical issues might arise, companies are made by different functions. For example, accounting function, finance function, marketing functions, technologies functions, and so forth. So issues can emerge everywhere in these functions. For example, if we take accounting, what is accounting? Accounting is very relevant for a company, because based on accounting, a company is able to collect, measure, and report its financial performance. And as a stakeholder, we read the financial performance in the financial statement. If the accounting is not reliable, is not accurate, stakeholders will have false disclosure, false information. So why can issues in accounting, why issues can emerge? Because there could be conflict of interest of the governance with the real activity of the company. They are driven by self-interest and so forth. So I said this already. What is accounting about? Accounting is directed to disclose information for stakeholders. So, for example, if bookkeeping is falsified, of course, the related financial statements that are based on bookkeeping won't indicate the real financial performance. Another function that is part of a business is finance. Ethical issues can emerge in finance. Finance is the finance department is the department that relates to the assets of a company. So is devoted to raising funds for the company. So issues in the finance department can create major ethical, major issues for the company. Ok, questo era... Okay, here there was a financial, in this example, there was a financial issues as they were stolen. The company was accused of fraud because was inflating basically the asset of a bank, but it was not like that. Okay, in order to face ethical issues, there are professional codes of conduct. For example, for accountants, there are ethical code of conduct, which indicates what is ethical and what is not. Companies themselves can have ethical code of conduct to be respected by the employees and whoever operate with them. Another functions in which issues might arise is marketing. Marketing is very relevant because it's the advertising, is the face that all the people see for that company. For example, a few years ago, Nestlé tried to capitalize on customer interest because they were indicating they were supporting trade fair in El Salvador, supporting the local farmers. Instead, the local farmers were pushed to work with little amount of wages for the coffee they were provided to the company, and putting them actually into poverty, while Nestlé was raising its profit because they were selling a product that in theory should be performed under the label of fair trade. So another example of ethical issues. Information technology, another example of a company stolen the identity of its employees for a fraud. So issues can arise in different functions. we talked earlier about the supply chain, the ethical supply chain. Okay, what to do to prevent ethical issues? Companies can, I have finished, I can see it's 12, put in place safeguards in order to prevent ethical issues. And if these safeguards are used in a company consistently, they are institutionalized. What are these safeguards? Top management commitment and involvement. This is critical to fostering employees' ethical behavior. So the top management indicate the way in the company all managers, employees, etc. need to operate. Ethical policies or codes, for example, codes of conduct to be observed by the employees of the company. Another safeguard is to put in place ethics and compliance officers. So if it is an ethical issue, there could be in a company an office to which ask help if ethical issues emerge. And here I put the example of the University of California compliance officer. Ethic reporting mechanism. So if an ethical issue emerges, there would be a mechanism to which to send the what has emerged in order for who has the possibility to act against. Ethical training programs, learning. Learning is very relevant in order to improve the ethical behavior, and audits. Audits means checks, ethics checks. Altogether, they form a comprehensive ethical programs. Okay, sorry guys, I gave you the short version. And at the end, there are the questions that are already online on Virtuale. Sorry very much for having taken a bit longer than usual. See you next week on Friday, okay? Sorry, on Wednesday, okay?
Le chiedo, se non facciamo la presentazione possiamo fare l'esame ad aprile?
Allora, se non fate la presentazione?
Possiamo o non possiamo fare l'esame ad aprile?
No, l'esame lo possono fare tutti, però vale il 40%.
Sì, se non faccio la presentazione 100% ad aprile.
Sì, però in realtà bisogna prendere almeno 18 nel lavoro di gruppo. Quindi, cioè, bisogna fare il lavoro di gruppo.
Per fare l'esame ad aprile, dico.
Perché lei non può esserci quel giorno?
No, era perché mi chiedevano altri ragazzi. Perché
Allora, se loro lavorano che non possono essere in presenza, eccetera, è lo stesso. L'importante è lavorare insieme, io mi fido di voi.
Ok, però, cioè, della serie, se uno non vuole fare la presentazione...
se non la vuole fare...
Non può fare l'esame ad aprile.
Cioè, è 40%, deve prendere almeno 18.
Fa 0, quindi sì, ovvio. Ok, va benissimo.
Quindi se uno non fa la presentazione fa 0 praticamente.
Lì va male, cioè prende meno di 18, quindi non passa il 40% dell'esame. Quindi è difficile passare tutto l'esame senza aver passato il 40%.
Ok, bene. Vabbè, grazie.
Non si può fare il totale.
Sì, se no il primo totale sarebbe
giugno e settembre.
Okay.
Però in teoria questa presentazione, questo lavoro di gruppo dovrebbe così aiutarvi a prendere un ottimo voto. Non dovrebbe fare il contrario, quindi dovrebbe essere un incentivo, non un disincentivo. C'è qualcuno che non lo vuole fare?
Ragazzi magari internazionali che abitano molto lontano in Europa, hanno chiesto il gruppo.
No, ma loro possono lavorare, cioè noi li mettiamo con qualcun altro e
che è a distanza.
Che è a distanza e si lavora online, certo.
Quindi dobbiamo specificare nella mail se siamo in presenza o a distanza. Cioè che siamo...
È lo stesso, io mi fido di voi, se voi mi dite queste 5 persone hanno lavorato, vuol dire che hanno lavorato e la presentazione è il frutto del lavoro di tutti.
Possiamo rifiutare il voto della
certo che si può rifiutare tutto quello che si vuole, se è sufficiente si può rifiutare.
Grazie mille.
Prego, arrivederci. Arrivederci. Allora, resta, sospendi.